Hey, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Fundraisers Friday with one of my top 10 favorite people of all time, Tony Bell. How are you, Mr. Nonprofit Consultancy?
I'm doing great, Julia. Thank you. Happy Friday to you and you as well. One of my top 10 favorite people. I look forward to this every single Friday. It truly is one of the highlights of the week, and particularly this episode because the Q&A is always so much fun, and you never know what you're going to get and how, we're going to be challenged in responding to great questions and thoughts coming in from folks that are watching or listening. So yeah, happy Friday, and thanks again for having me.
I love and of course, highlight of my week too. And I love this because I find that you challenge me. You don't always have the same answer that I would, and I'm always like, I learn. I get a different point of view, and that old adage, more than one way to skin a cat, right? You can tell my roots from the South. West.
It's funny because I know sometimes I think about, those types of phrases that I learned as a child growing up, on a tobacco farm or whatever. And you go to repeat them now, you're like, they don't really play as well as they used to.
As we would say, as suave as Tony Bell is, it is riveting that you grew up on a tobacco farm. People might think you were joking, but you did. And I remember you told me when I first met you, one of your big philanthropic environments or lessons was 4-H, right?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I was a member of 4-H very early, and so at a great organization. I'm still very passionate about 4-H in terms of advocating for what they do and their mission. But yeah, I grew up on a tobacco farm, 4-H, Future Farmers of America, all the good stuff.
Okay, I got to ask this personal question. Did you ever smoke, and did your family smoke?
So the for a short period of time.
Mm-hmm.
So I did for a very short period of time, but that was like the right after high school kind of I'm so cool.
Yeah.
Was really but no, you definitely did not smoke the tobacco you were growing. I mean, you were growing that to dry it, take it to auction, and have it purchased by a tobacco company. So that was, yeah.
That's like the baker eating his donuts. You don't do it. Oh my God. Well, I love that we started this way because super kooky. And I think it's very interesting to kind of know your backstory because then it makes your answers like even more valuable or rich, right? And so it's super, super fun. Another fun thing that we have and a backstory that we have here at the Nonprofit Show, that includes our amazing presenting sponsors. They include Bloomerang, American Nonprofit Academy, Staffing Boutique, JMT Consulting, Fundraisers Friday, Your Part-Time Controller, Third Sector Company, and Clear Impact. These are the folks that have joined us now for more than 1,200 episodes.
Wow.
Which blows my mind. I'm Julia C. Patrick, CEO of the American Nonprofit Academy. Tony Bell, Mr. Nonprofit Consultancy, one of my all-time faves. And he and I have joined together to do these Friday episodes. And they're really just a lot of fun. So today we're going to do something a little different. And that is every, once a month or so, we do question and answers. These questions come into us through our social media. They might come to us, somebody like emails, writes in, or stops me on the street and asks these questions. And so they're kind of an amalgamation of things that come through. And so let's start off with the first question. This question came to me at a speaking gig that I had, and I was talking to a group about next gen board development, right? How do you get a newer, fresher, younger group, a generation of donors and civic leaders? The question came to me, should major donors automatically be elected to the board? This organization, and I'll call it out, it was arts and culture organization, had a standing policy. It was not written. It was just more of a verbal thing that everybody in development knew, that if you donated over 500,000, you were given a seat on the board, or you could charge that to somebody. So maybe a family member, maybe a business partner, but it was your place, right? So what do you think about this?
I got kind of cringy as you explained to me that, like my palms started sweating. I was like, ew, this, I need like some hand sanitizer after this question. Uh, but so, I mean, just why? I mean, why would you automatically, there has to be a good why as to why you would put that or support that individual being nominated onto the board of directors. And remember, I purposely use the word nominated because there is typically a process to be on the board of directors and rules around such that start with a nomination for someone to serve on the board. I don't think people should be buying their way onto board seats. I think the cringy part was that they could allocate that seat to someone else. Uh, and so, what does that mean for your organization? Are you getting the type of talent that your board needs?
Right.
So, or are you just accepting anybody, that has a pulse to sit at the table? So I'm not a fan of giving somebody a seat at the table because they purchased it.
Mm-hmm.
I think folks get a seat at the table because they earned it and
Mm-hmm.
they're adding value and it meets the strategic needs of the organization so that you can best serve the communities you're meant to serve.
Right.
I mean, that's just
So,
how I feel. There are other things you can do with them if they have
yeah.
if they have talent that they can bring. Again, if it's justifiable in terms of skill sets and stuff to put them on the board, amen, do it.
Mhm.
Otherwise, you can have advisory groups or other types of task forces or affinity groups
Mhm.
where these folks can, I mean, create a major donor affinity group where you
Mhm.
bring them all together. You can share with them very
Mhm.
candidly what's going on with the organization, organizationally,
Mhm.
future forward thinking stuff, and get
Mhm.
their input. So there's ways to still have them participate
Mhm.
without, being on the board.
Tony, I was thinking because it's an arts organization, a way to honor that person could have been to say that they're going to be honored at a certain performance, and that could go in the marketing. You know,
Mhm.
XYZ, and I'm going to just say like ballet. Giselle honoring Mr. and Mrs. Smith or whoever that donor is, right?
Mhm.
Um, so then, to me, if you were a big donor, that probably would be a lot more sexy than saying, okay, great, you gave us your money, now you got to come and also do work.
Right.
Right.
No, now you have all this other accountability, right? It's not
Yes.
enough that you gave us, $500,000, but now we want you to be even more accountable for the
Yeah.
success of the organization. But I
Yeah.
don't think there's anything wrong with putting Mr. and Mrs. Smith in a tutu and giving them a little part of the action in the performance, right? So
Mhm. Yeah.
there definitely, I'm glad you brought it up. Definitely super creative ways
Mhm.
for folks to feel valued and
Yeah.
feel as if they're contributing and participating above and beyond their gift.
Right. I think so. And I think we just need to be thoughtful about it. And then also, Tony, you've said this to me in the past on different issues, and to flip the script and ask the donor, what would be meaningful to you? And they
Mm.
might be like, I would like to, underwrite this, or I'd like to have a naming right, or I'd like to have, a private performance in my home for, 50 friends, whatever. I mean, there are ways to strengthen that relationship by really starting at that point with what's the motivation or the interest of the donor. So
I'm
it's
glad
not
that
a
you
one-time thing.
I'm glad that you brought that up because sometimes I know I can be frustrating when folks ask me questions because you know every scenario is just so unique because every individual is unique. And so I often say, you definitely do not want to take kind of these cookie cutter approaches to any of the things that we talk about. I don't think any of the topics, subjects, or themes of the shows during the week. I mean, there's no real cookie cutter approach. It's here are best practices and strategies, but those still need to be applied in a very individual way.
Yeah, I agree. I think that also it just strengthens your relationship and your position with that donor and your organization. And then ultimately, as we all know, we talk about this so much, but it's hard to measure and it's sometimes frustrating to understand, is that it's the duration of that relationship. It's not a one-time transactional thing, because that never goes anywhere, right?
Nope. Yep.
No, okay, well, that was an interesting conversation. This is a question that we've had from time to time, and I find this to be really interesting. And the question is, how many donors should be in a fundraiser's portfolio? Honest to God, I get asked this question a lot, and I don't really have a good answer, other than, why are you asking the question? Do you feel like you have too many, or you
Right.
don't have enough, or you don't have the right? I mean, I always feel like that's the starting point. And maybe I'm wrong, because I've never been a professional fundraiser. I've just been a community fundraiser. So
Yeah.
talk to us about this.
Yeah, so I think that this is such a great topic and could almost justify its own show, because there's so much deep diving that can go into this particular question. And why I say that is because how many donors should be in a fundraiser's portfolio first starts with, what are the resources within the organization? If I'm the sole development person, guess what? I got them all. They're all in my portfolio.
100%. Yeah.
Right? Major donors, mid-level donors, annual fund, they're all in my portfolio.
Yeah.
But if I have the luxury of working for an organization, serving an organization where I have, a team of coworkers that are also in development, where we can segment our donor population so that, someone's working on major gifts, someone else is working on mid-level donors, someone else is doing annual appeals, then we can start to talk, in a better way about what that number should look like. But typically for, let's say, a major gifts officer, because the level of engagement and ongoing relationship work that takes place, I think the average is around 75 to maybe 150 donors,
Wow.
within that portfolio for major gifts.
Okay.
Mid-level donors, it's a different approach. I mean, of course, in all of this, we're looking to elevate folks, right, in kind of the giving pyramid and move them up the ladder. But with mid-level donors, you're looking at probably 200 to 400 in their portfolio, and that's just because the engagement and the way in which we engage those donors is very different.
Yeah.
Right, than a high level donor.
Yeah.
And then an annual fund, someone, managing annual gifts, annual campaigns, could have as many as 500 to 1,000, in their portfolio, again, because those are typically done in more mass communication style, direct mail campaigns, so again, it first starts with, what are the resources in my organization? Do I even have the luxury of segmenting our donors so that then each person can really focus on, that segmentation? And then that, you see that mostly in higher ed,
Yes.
this type of segmentation.
Right.
You don't see it a lot in the, small to medium sized organizations. So that's what I would say. If, 75 to 100 for major gifts, 200 to 400 for mid-level, 500 to 1,000 for annual fund would be in your portfolio, if you have the luxury of being able to divide up your resources that way.
Right. I love that you kind of gave us those parameters and to understand what that looks like, because it seems to me, Tony, that could also help inform planning growth. Like, where do you need to bring in more professional development people, and where do you see that going, versus just looking at the staffing budget, but really understanding the execution and looking at it as an investment. When you bring in professional fundraisers, you should have an escalation of funding.
Yeah, for sure. And understanding too, in that analysis, what tools and technology do you need to invest in so that, someone can manage a portfolio of 500 to 1,000,
Right.
so that someone can effectively manage 200 to 400, whatever that number is. What technology and tools do you need to either acquire or upgrade in
Right.
order for that to be done successfully.
Right. And I appreciate you bringing that up, because that the nexus between your technology and your ability to manage these people is huge. I mean, if you're starting small and you have a little spreadsheet that you're working on, or notebook, that's a lot different than having like Bloomerang or one of our venerable partners that actually runs these types of systems. So yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely, absolutely. Very interesting conversation. Not the only time that we're going to hear this question, my friend.
I don't think it's the first time we've seen it. So,
No, it's very interesting. Okay, let's go to the next question. How often should a fundraiser connect with a donor in person? Now, I think this is an interesting question, because I'm going to phrase this or frame this as post-pandemic.
mhm.
People are now more comfortable, going out, meeting, IRL, one of my favorite things, in real life. Talk to me about what you think about this.
So I'm going to give that horrible answer, that kind of, that almost politician answer, and that, it depends on the individual and what the individual would like to experience. I could say for me, my desire would be at a minimum quarterly.
Oh,
At a
wow.
minimum. Again, it depends on the donor level,
Okay.
right? So, you know, at a minimum quarterly. Again, it depends on the individual. I don't know that a major donor is going to want to meet with you in person every month.
No.
I mean, maybe every other month, maybe. So that's why I think quarterly is a good place, is a good benchmark, a good place to start. Is to think about how you can connect with your donors in person on a quarterly basis. And again, based on the previous question, depending on what your portfolio looks
Yeah.
like, quarterly may even be aggressive,
Yeah.
depending on the number of folks that are within your portfolio.
Mhm.
But meeting folks face to face, in person, and I really should say in person right now, right? Because right now we're face to face, but we're not in person.
Mhm.
But I do think meeting with donors in person as often as they would like is just priceless,
Mhm.
because there's so much that you're going to learn about them that you don't already know just from that in person, engagement. Uh,
Mhm.
so the other thing is thinking about within the organization, what is the budget, that allows for in-person meetings. So, how many coffees or lunches can you do,
Mhm.
in a quarter, and have that support the budget, and so
True.
you have to think about all of that kind of stuff too.
Right.
But now that I said that, but be creative. So invite a donor, on a nice day, not this season in the Northeast, but on a nice day, invite a donor to a local park, and take a stroll around the park for
Mhm.
15 or 20 minutes.
Wow.
So you can get creative of
Mhm.
ways to do that, so it doesn't have, a huge impact on the bottom line.
Mhm.
Uh, but again, the quick answer for me would be at least quarterly to meet with them in person.
So when you say that in person, we're not just saying, in old-fashioned marketing terms, a touch. You're not saying, a voicemail, a handwritten note, swag. You're saying like literally meeting them with a defined time, for on your campus, your place of business, or
Mhm,
to your point, somewhere else. Wow.
mhm. Nothing replaces that. Nothing replaces that in-person interaction
Right.
with a donor. I can sit here and show you how excited I am about being on the show, and I mean, it's all just awesome, right? You can see me expressing that, but you can't feel the energy that comes with it.
Right.
And so when we're face to face, you feel the energy that
Yeah.
comes with that you just don't feel via Zoom or in a voicemail, or any other touch point, as you said. So, uh,
Right.
and again, I want to be mindful and respectful of bandwidth and how you make that happen. So I think that the previous question is really important.
Right.
Who's in your portfolio, who are you going to prioritize, realizing everyone is important and everyone is a VIP to the organization. But the reality is you have to prioritize your time. So how are you going to prioritize these in-person meetings? Maybe you're going to take the top 10% in each of those segments.
Yeah.
And
That's a great strategy, Tony. That's a great strategy.
And meet with them in person, that way. So
that's
in
smart.
person, at least quarterly.
Yeah. That's a great way to, I love that you kind of gave us that lens, because that makes it a lot more achievable. Because it's not easy coordinating calendars. My gosh, just to coordinate a calendar with somebody is just.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. And there are tools to help do that, right? I mean, there are tools to help you, schedule stuff, but even that is like overwhelming when you open up some of those apps.
Yeah. And if you're dealing with more than one person and you're coordinating 3 schedules, or it's really, really hard. And I think that you have to be kind of thoughtful about this process, again, so you don't wear somebody out. And I'm talking about on the donor side as well as the organizational side.
Sure. And again, being mindful of time and bandwidth. You don't want to book them back to back so that then they start feeling like transactional encounters.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't want to say, well, I'm going to meet with donor A at Starbucks from 12 to 12:30, and then donor B is going to meet me from 12:45 to 1:15.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not how you kind of stack these and make them happen. You're going to want to give yourself space between these in-person meetings so that you can really digest what you've heard and learned from the donor that you just met with, and then give yourself space to remind yourself and prepare yourself for the next donor interaction.
I love that you said that, because it sounds good and it sounds efficient until you have to do it. And then you're like, what was I thinking? Okay, let's go into the next question. And it's really interesting. It's like, can you talk about wealth screening tools? Should we invest in this? This is not a free thing necessarily, although there are free assets and tools that you can use. Talk to us about this.
So again, I think it depends on where your organization is and what your fundraising goals are. If you are an so again, I think we've talked about this in other shows about the importance of diversifying your fundraising streams, right? So that you have multiple channels of donations and investments coming into the organization. And some organizations, 75, 80% of their funding stream comes from special events and galas. So how valuable is an investment in a wealth screening tool going to be if your fundraising pie, 80% of that is events? So first think about, what your funding streams look like and the percentage, that you're receiving, right? From where are those coming from? So that should help you decide whether or not it's worth an investment. Maybe you are at 75 or 80% in events, but you're seeing trends that make you think, I have to start ramping up on my one-on-one donor engagement, one-on-one gifts. These type of wealth screening tools are going to be really valuable in terms of, I look down here because I made some notes, like looking at my notes on my desk. These wealth screening tools are going to be really valuable if you're looking to increase your one-on-one donor engagement, because they'll help with donor insights, they'll help with stewardship, they'll help you be able to target some of your messaging, some of your direct mail. So they'll really help you be better at a lot of the things that you're already doing, because you'll have this additional information to help guide some of the decisions that you make around your approaches. So again, depending on where you are, how your organization is raising funds, how you may or may not want to increase individual giving, wealth screening tools, I think, are essential in terms of helping you increase individual donors.
What I think is so magical about this, and then we need to jump ahead. every organization should know that first metric, that pie chart. Where's your revenue coming from? What does this look like? Contracts, grants, whatever it might be, philanthropy events. This is something that we need to know. And I don't know why, but I never put the two together in terms of answering that question. Understanding where your revenue is coming in, and then making that decision if it's a good value for you or not. Because I think a lot of times you hear wealth screening, oh my gosh, it's going to help me speed up the process and get introduced to rich people. And it's like, no, it doesn't work that way. And so I love that you helped step back and say, why are we doing this and what should it look like? Fundraisers Friday, you have some good stuff, my
Well,
friend.
thank you. And some fundraisers cringe at the idea of using wealth screening tools because they're like, ooh, that just sounds, ooh. But really, it's all about just being, as informed as possible. It's data, data, data. That's what these are helping you receive is data, so that
Yeah.
you can make, really informed decisions about, how you're investing in tools and,
Yeah.
and how you're maximizing giving.
Right. Well, and I think as organizationally, especially when I think about board work, a lot of times boards think that money comes in from a certain area exclusively or dominantly, and that's not the case, right? We have to really understand where our funding sources are, what's the health of those funding sources, and what do we lean into. I always tease with you about the old Mickey Rooney, Judy Garland trope, my dad's got a barn, let's put on a show to help whatever. I mean, White Christmas, perfect example. I mean, that's been broadcast, ad nauseum during the holidays, but that's that trope, right? Let's put on a show to help the general keep his, motel or his
Right.
inn open, whatever. And I
Right.
think that we fall into that trap, right? It's just such an interesting thing
Mhm.
that we can't get around. Let's put on an event and, get people liquored up and then they'll write checks. It's like, yeah, no, not a good way to be sustainable. But anyway, hey, everybody, this has really been fun. Another successful episode of Fundraisers Friday. You can ask us your questions, info at americannonprofitacademy.com. You can go on to our social media platforms, LinkedIn. I mean, we're out there in so many ways. And send us your questions. We have moved this to kind of an anonymous position because the fundraising community can be very small. And so we won't, tell us who you are, and really, really important. So I've got to read this question that came, or comment that came in. It said, "Great information, love this." And I've had those hard days where smiling and dialing, love that. Smiling and dialing was so hard. Wealth screening worked well for us during a major capital campaign.
Great. Yes, absolutely. That is a great example.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. That is a great example.
Yeah, really awesome. Well, this, of course, has been fabulous. Tony, I know you are buried under a tremendous amount of snow up in the Northeast today and probably this week. And so I say stay warm, and we'll catch you back here next Friday. Also, want to make sure that we extend our warmth. Man, that was a tough one. I was like, how am I going to drag that through? We express our warmth and gratitude to our partners: Bloomerang, American Nonprofit Academy, Staffing Boutique, JMT Consulting, Fundraisers Friday, Your Part-Time Controller, Third Sector Company, and Clear Impact. These are the folks that join us day in and day out as we navigate these exciting topics, especially for our fundraising warriors that are out there really doing the work of the angels and keeping our nonprofits so they can achieve their mission. So we say thank you to you all, and you, those of you who are professionals, really leaning into this part of our sector. Hey, Tony, as we end each and every episode, we end with this amazing message, and it goes like this: to stay well, so you can do well.